Welcome everyone to our local mayoral debate this evening. As we get closer and closer to October 24th, we turn our attention to the municipal debates, and today's debate is with the Town of Gananoque mayoral candidates. Now, before I introduce you to our candidates, I'll go over the format for this evening. We will begin with opening statements. Each candidate will have a 2-minute opportunity to give their opening statements. The order for this was determined just a few moments ago. After this, we will go directly into the debate portion of this evening. I will ask a candidate a question. They will have 2 minutes to respond. Following this, each of the remaining 2 candidates will have a 1-minute opportunity to respond before we return to the original candidate, who will have an opportunity for a 30-second recap. Then we will move to the second question and continue with the same format. We ask the candidates to watch for the green, yellow, and red flags, indicating when you have 30 seconds for green, 10 seconds left for yellow, and red is stop, and you must stop on the red flag. At the end of our questions, each candidate will have 2 minutes to give their closing statements before we close out the debate portion of our evening. Candidates and guests may then return back to the lobby here to meet and greet the candidates once more and ask any additional questions they may have firsthand. Now to introduce the candidates to you. We have Mr. Ted Loico, Mr. John Beddoes, and Mr. Greg Truesdale. And now, without further ado, let's move to our first candidate and his opening statement. And Ted, this is you. We will start with you.
Thank you. As Mayor of the Town of Gananoque, I am proud of the commitment that our town councillors have displayed over the last few years. The COVID-19 pandemic overshadowed almost everything, but Town Council and staff responded quite quickly to keep residents safe by providing gloves, masks, and sanitizers within days of going into the lockdown imposed by the province. We celebrated Canada Day by providing lawn signs, switched to Zoom meetings, and arranged music on the streets and porches to allow residents to social distance and to still enjoy our community. Council didn't always agree on every motion and every bylaw, but one thing they did agree on was to ensure that we preserve the small town feel of Gananoque and to ensure that we supported our local businesses. There are some things that Council could have done better, looking back in time, but overall decisions were made and we needed to respond to those decisions and move forward. Staff worked well with Town Council not only to respond to the challenges, but equally to ensure that we sought and obtained grants and subsidies more than any other municipality in Leeds-Grenville. Unfortunately, some of our undertakings had to be set aside. The need for public transit, although a priority, was put on the back burner. During the summer, many businesses and hospitality industries lack employees. Many people work in Kingston. Many people would prefer to use transit to go to Kingston for medical appointments, go to school, etc. The town has been negotiating with Kingston for over a year to extend the bus service on a daily basis, and hopefully by 2023, it'll become a reality. Affordable housing, although much needed in Gananoque, has been a challenge as well. Several affordable housing endeavours are currently underway. Stocking Hill is in the process of applying for funding to add additional apartments. Horizon Legacy will be building 3D housing in the spring and has committed 30% to be affordable. The challenge to balance between what needs to be done to preserve the character and infrastructure of our town is an ongoing challenge. I look forward to the opportunity to continue to work with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ted. Now, John, over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is John Beddoes. This is my second time running for mayor. The first time was in 2018. And I'm here presenting myself again on a campaign of affordability, transparency, and accountability. Despite COVID, one of the most interesting things that happened with this mayor and council is that before every single meeting, there was a closed meeting. None of the minutes from any of those meetings have ever been published, despite the fact that most of the reasons why you might hold a closed meeting are actually discretionary. If you're buying or selling a piece of property, there's a sunset clause. Guess what? When the deal's done, you can publish the minutes, but they've never been put out, not a single one from any meeting held by this council. I believe that the mayor needs to be present, the mayor needs to be accountable, and the mayor needs to be forward. The mayor's office belongs in that glassed-in room next to the counter at City Hall with a sign out front that said the mayor is in between 3 and 7 on Thursdays or Wednesdays. If I'm already talking to somebody, please be patient. I will listen to you as well. We need a mayor, and I'm hoping to create a climate in which we reinstate transparency in public government. My intention is not just to look at the budget and the numbers, but to try and ensure that that budget and those numbers deliver the maximum amount of services and the most cost benefit for you. Management of contracts in a way that doesn't waste public money is front and center with me. I believe in hockey. I grew up playing hockey, but the issue that I have with the rink is not that we have hockey, it's that the contract was poorly managed, and we're now putting bad money after good in order to make it work better. I think we need to deliver services for our seniors, and we need to deliver affordable housing. If it had been important to this mayor, it would have been a main effort, and so would have transit been. COVID gave an opportunity to plan. They didn't do that. Planning didn't happen. It would have been ready to be turned on if, when nothing else was going on, they built a plan to activate it when it was ready. Thank you for your time. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, John. And now for our final candidate, Greg, if you could give your 2-minute opening statement, please.
Okay, thank you. Okay, hi everybody, and I've decided to run for mayor to help the citizens who have been consistently left out of plans and proposals of previous councils. Primary concerns are food security and accommodation security. Secondary to that would be economic development. We do have a thriving community, but economic development is the foundation of that. Providing potential businesses with service locations and tax incentives is a good way of enticing businesses to locate here. I'd like to see Gananoque become a year-round destination for visitors. And our town is located in one of the most beautiful spots in the Thousand Islands, yet our waterfront has been a parking lot for tourists for 60 years. We have a beautiful waterfront, but it has never come close to realizing its potential. And it shouldn't just be a place where tourists park their cars. Transparency and accountability should be a cornerstone in government. Sadly, it's not. That needs to change. There's been a lot of questionable decisions made and a lot of your hard-earned tax dollars spent on unjustified and unreasonable projects. Taxpayers shouldn't have to go through Freedom of Information Act to find out how their money has been misspent. So the hows and whys of these issues need to be answered and presented to the public. And I remember how proud I was of our community when we had the overwhelming number of volunteers for Festival of the Islands celebrations. So I'd like to sort of energize the townsfolk to sort of take an interest in the government or the governing of their town.
Thank you, Greg.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, and I forgot to mention at the beginning, in case any of you are wondering who I am and why I'm up here doing this. Sorry about that. I just wanted to really jump right in there. So my name is Amber Scott. I am the president of the Thousand Islands and Gananoque Chamber of Commerce, and we are the ones that have brought this to you this evening. So sorry that I selflessly left myself out of that one, but that's who I am, and it's very nice to see such a great turnout. Thank you very much. On with that. So thank you to each of you. We will now move on to the debate portion of this evening. We will begin with Ted. You will have 2 minutes to respond to the question after I ask it, after which we'll move down the row, giving each candidate 1 minute to respond before returning back to you for the final 30 seconds of your closing statement. Question number 1. If elected, what steps would you take to put our town on a firmer financial footing?
So the town of Gananoque actually is on a fairly firm financial footing. We have a treasurer that I must tell you is probably one of the best treasurers in the province. Every single penny that isn't used for something is immediately squirreled away and put into the reserves. And honestly, I am quite proud of our staff, not only ensuring that we are in a firm financial setting, but more importantly, they're always looking at various grants and programs throughout the whole period. During the whole COVID thing, our staff managed to capture probably more money back from the province than any other municipality combined in Leeds Grenville. We received a check for $1.2 million, where other municipalities got $60,000, $100,000, et cetera, et cetera. And I think part of it is that our staff has been very diligent in ensuring that from a budgetary perspective, all councillors are aware of where we stand on various projects. There have been obviously some projects that we've had to go back to the till in order to deal with increased construction costs and whatnot. But overall, quite honestly, we will be faced with other challenges in 2023, and I'm counting on the new councillors that are elected, hopefully with myself, to be able to deal with the funding appropriately to ensure that we are not raising property taxes or keep the property taxes at a minimum kind of thing. Obviously, there are other financial concerns that we're constantly dealing with, and quite honestly, I commend the staff by keeping the council on budget and working quite diligently to ensure that we are meeting our obligations to the citizens here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And John, on to you.
Thank you. I would point out that Mr. Loyko talked a great deal about what the staff was going to do and almost nothing about what he would do as mayor. So he talked about our excellent staff, which is true. He talked about our stupendous treasurer, which is completely accurate. But he didn't say what he was going to do as mayor to put our town on a more firm financial footing. Right now, the numbers are kind of concerning when you look at them. The town's tax levy is $9.2 million. The town's entire salary budget projected for this year is $8.199 million. There's not a lot of room in the middle there. There are untendered contracts, like $73,000 for fuel that weren't put out to competitive bid. We're not watching the details on the money, and we're not watching the big money to understand where the spending happens. The town can't count on the lottery, on the revenue from the casino, because they're taking out the slots and putting in game tables. Revenue from the province shrinks year over year, and grant money is still your taxpayer money. We need to make sure that we spend what we have wisely and actually maintain our infrastructure.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
And Greg, on to you.
Okay. Well, I think certainly the economic development that's gone on here, I'm not really aware of a lot of it. The money, there seems to be a lot of money that has been spent on things that either didn't need to be done, that certainly aren't going to generate any income or any revenue for the town. The one thing that comes to mind would be the town park. To me, just seems like it has gone way over budget. It is something that, in my opinion, didn't need to be done at all. And for, as example, the food bank needed a $30,000 ramp. The town refused to pay any money towards that, and they had to kick in the money themselves. That's unacceptable.
Thank you, Greg. And Ted, back to you for your final comments.
Sure. So just a couple of quick points. The town council actually looked at the whole issue of short-term accommodation here in town to deal with the lack of housing, affordable housing, but more importantly, we also added a 4% municipal accommodation tax to every tourist that comes into town in order to basically put money back into the needs of the community, whether they're adding money into the parks, whether they're adding money into various events, et cetera, et cetera. So the money was basically to provide the residents of town with something back for all the tourism that comes through. As far as town park goes, when we walked into council, thank you.
Thank you, Ted. I really didn't want to interrupt you. Just know I have to do this if we're going to get through everything tonight, so I don't want to be pushy, but yes. All right, so question number 2. John, you're going to start this, and then Greg, it'll be you, and then Ted, and then John, back to you for final closing. So what is the main challenge that you see in the mayor's position?
The main challenge is actually creating the long-term planning for implementation for the long-term economic benefit of this town, to deliver services for all segments of our population and to manage the budget in a way that's transparent so that you can look at it and know what's going on. Right now, the committee of the whole meeting went away, and in council meetings, you're only allowed to ask questions about reports, not correspondence. This mayor and council have put the treasurer's updates into correspondence, which means that if you're a member of the public, you can't ask questions about the budget on the record and the spending. And I believe that attracting industry and investment, expanding tourism into a year-round activity, but complementing ongoing efforts to attract year-round employment and industry. Initiatives like, for example, trying to attract the National Theatre School's Ontario Theatre Festival as a winter festival would anchor a festival here in the winter that would put 500 teenage kids in hotel rooms for a week in March. And that would link tourism and the arts in a way that delivers economic benefits in a dead season. Gananoque should be in the business of attracting not only industry, but we need to be in the business of keeping those things we have. Businesses like Cardinal, businesses like Thompson Fasteners. And when it comes to things like short-term accommodations, the MAT tax, and building affordable housing, I would remind Mr. Loyko that the short-term accommodations piece in MAT doesn't deliver that much benefit. The MAT tax is where the Integrity Commissioner found that he shouldn't have voted in the first place. And one of the things I would do to bring more transparency is to make sure that, unlike this council, we don't have the same person who's also the town's lawyer and the Integrity Commissioner of the town. So we have the same man earning his income, providing legal services to the town, whose job it is to investigate the conduct of the council, and the mayor, on whose goodwill he depends. I don't believe that this is an effective arrangement. I think that we need to remove bias and increase transparency. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And Greg, for you?
I agree 100%. There's pretty well zero transparency. I still don't realize, I don't understand how the Integrity Commissioner can vote on anything when he should have recused himself in the first place after Ted did not recuse himself with the short-term rental accommodations. I'm all for short-term rental accommodations. People's mortgages are going up. We should be making it easier for them to rent either a room in their house or something on their property to help them. I hate to see somebody lose their house because they can't pay for their mortgage. They can't augment their income. And the Integrity Commissioner, as I said, should have recused himself in the first place. How can you have an Integrity Commissioner that also works for the town?
Thank you very much, Greg. Ted?
The only thing I will agree at this point with John is that we need to have two separate lawyers, but only because. But you have to remember that lawyers do not work for the town; they are on contract to do specific things. So we have a lot more than just one lawyer working for the town on contract. But as far as the budget goes, it is very transparent. Anybody can actually open up the Gananoque website, and you can look at every penny that has actually been spent on a regular basis at council meetings. The treasurer provides the monthly reports, and if anybody has a question specifically, they can go directly to her and ask her the question, and she will reply in writing, which is the procedure that we put forward, only because people were asking questions and she wasn't able to answer them at council meetings directly. So as far as the transparency of the budget goes, the budget is online. The budget is very clear where the money has been spent across the board. So, I'm quite happy that if people want the information, it is available.
All right, that brings us back to you, John, for your closing remarks.
Thank you. 2 council meetings ago, the monthly update came in, and it included a line item that was, if I remember correctly, $810 for the Hells Angels Toronto Motorcycle Rally. It was in correspondence. While on its face, it may simply be a straight-up contribution to security, there's no way to ask a question to find out why the town spent $810 on a Hells Angels motorcycle rally. The black dot items also count. If you can't ask a question of politicians in public in a meeting about the way that money's being spent, there is no public accountability.
Thank you very much. On to question number 3, and this time we're going to start with you, Greg. What do you think is the greatest problem facing Gananoque now, and what actions will you take if you are elected mayor to help mitigate it?
Well, getting back to the economic development, I think we need to be providing serviced lots to entice businesses to come to Gananoque. I certainly would like to see Gananoque as a year-round destination, tourist destination. Our waterfront, which has never even come close to realizing its potential, could be a perfect venue for attracting year-round tourism. As far as parking goes, it's beyond me why we've had one of the nicest waterfronts in the Thousand Islands, a parking lot for cars for 60 years. So anyway, as far as economic development goes, I know there's a committee, but I really haven't seen too many businesses coming to Gananoque, aside from tourist businesses. So I'd like to sort of focus on getting some industry back here and also augment the tourism that's already here.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Mr. Loco.
So tourism is well and healthy in Gananoque. It has rebounded quite well, and it has continued to rebound, so I'm not going to even address that at this point. But the two major impediments that the town of Gananoque currently has is affordable housing. People do not have places to live in town if they want to live in town and have sold their house on one level. On the other level, the lack of employees here in Gananoque is also very difficult for a lot of businesses. During the summertime, they hire high school students, and in the wintertime, they do not have people that want to work in the various hospitality industries. If we have a public transit system, that should help us alleviate some of the problem by allowing people to commute from Kingston and from Lansdowne or other municipalities. But right now, a lot of businesses in town suffer because they do not have sufficient people to work. And we're not talking just about the hospitality industry, we're also talking about the manufacturing sector as well. So both housing and employment are crucial in this town to be able to sustain what we currently have.
Thank you very much, Ted. John.
In 2018, when I campaigned, the #1 issue that I talked about was affordable housing and housing affordability in Gananoque. Cardinal Health would hire 50 or more people right now if they could get them, but they can't get them because there's nowhere for them to live, and they would pay them $18 an hour with full benefits and potentially anchor young families in Gananoque. Affordable housing, or the affordability of housing, touches on everything, and it's a long-term problem because if you break ground now, you won't get it fixed for at least 4 years. In essence, the lack of movement in the last 4 years cost us those 4 years. When it comes to access to the waterfront, we have decisions from this council like building flower beds instead of parking. And I ask you, what do you think is going to happen the first time a snowplow crosses that? Parking access for locals as well as for tourists at the waterfront is critically important for quality of life for those of us who live here all the time. So there needs to be a balance between access for tourism, which anchors critical businesses like the boat line in Gananoque, which we can't afford to lose, while allowing us access to facilities like Rotary Park and the berm.
Thank you very much, John. And Greg, back to you for your closing statement.
Well, I'll swing it by in the same vein. It's beyond me why the Bay Road is closed. It forces all the traffic from the marina parking lot down into an already congested area. Those flower beds, instead of parking spots, are totally ridiculous. That makes no sense to me whatsoever. We're short parking spots as it is, and now we've got flower beds on the street where we should have parking spots. Opening the Bay Road would alleviate a lot of traffic congestion.
Thank you very much, Greg.
South.
And we're back to Mr. Loico. One of the biggest challenges for employers in GAN is to find staff. What role can the city play in overcoming this challenge?
Well, it's already been touched upon twice. One is the whole aspect of public transit. The town council has been working actually for the last 4 years to look at the whole public transit issue. We actually commissioned Queen's University to do a transit study. And at one point, we actually had put in the budget to actually implement public transit between Lansdowne, Gananoque, and Kingston. Unfortunately, when we were trying to get it up and running, COVID hit, and it made no sense to try to do a pilot project where we wouldn't be able to get people on the bus, period. But public transit is currently right now being negotiated with the Kingston Transit Commission, not only for Kingston, but also some Frontenac and also Loyalist County, in order to allow laborers to not only move into Kingston, but for people to work in Kingston and or in Odessa. The other aspect is housing. Yes, we have been remiss by not being able to get the housing off the ground for the last while, but we do have plans, and we do have various entities that are actually right now in the process of either planning housing or building housing, etc. And you will see that happening in the next while. I'm not really I'm not really going to apologize for that our council wasn't able to move forward on certain issues. I think we have done a remarkable job of moving the agenda forward, and we do have numerous plans that we had implemented, but at some point it all takes time, and they will come to fruition hopefully within 2023, if not 2024. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ted. John, your turn.
Thank you. One of the initiatives on short-term on affordable housing that was mentioned earlier was the newly to-be-built 3D housing project in the northwest end of town. The thing to remember about that is it's actually an experiment. And when the applicant came before PAC, they admitted that it was an experiment. They're trialing unproven construction techniques, and they needed a place to build them so people could live in them and see which ones are most cost-effective to build at large scale in an urban area. If it's affordable, it's only by accident, and it's being built here because land is less expensive. That's not to say we can't use the houses, but we can. Transit to Kingston isn't much of a solution. Cost of living in Kingston is the same as it is in Gananoque. The wages being paid in Gananoque won't allow you to live in Kingston, whether there's transit or not. And it's not a midterm solution for service delivery here either. My problem is not what was accomplished. It's that the focus on things like the MAT tax and short-term accommodations took them away from the stuff that we needed to have done in a downtime when there was an opportunity to build plans. And the mayor's job, the mayor controls the agenda at council meetings. The mayor's job is to steer that effort.
Thank you very much, John. Greg, on to you.
As far as affordable housing goes, I think we've covered most of the options that we have. The fact that we are very resistant, or the town council is very resistant to having anybody rent out a room on a short-term basis, or for that matter, even build one of those like tiny homes on their properties. That would alleviate a little bit of it. The casino already has a shuttle, I believe, that goes back and forth to Kingston. I don't know why we can't incorporate that bus with people that want to maybe have it go early in the morning for people that need to go to Kingston for appointments, and bring them back at the end of the day.
Okay, thank you very much. Ted, back to you.
I deal with a couple of quick issues. The short-term accommodation bylaw was put into place not because we were trying to prevent people from running bed and breakfast or whatever else. It was put in there because we were afraid that people were buying houses and turning them into bed and breakfast or into accommodations and making more money on it, and we needed the housing for rental purposes here in Gananoque. So that was their number one. Number two, the aspect of
Ted.
labor.
Sorry.
That's it?
That's it.
Okay.
You got one out. You're good. John, on to you for our next question. Do you see the town playing a role in providing affordable housing? Should we maybe just I think we'll skip that one. Do you think, or
Well, no,
would you like to answer that one? It's just we're on a lot of affordable housing comments, so if you have more to say, then wonderful.
Well, I think the town's role is to shape bylaws so that if you want to build housing, you have to include an affordable component, or you have to be focused on the affordable component of what you're building. Since I lived here in 2013, industry has built housing aimed at middle to higher price points, and that's capitalism. People are going to look to make the most money from what they've got. But there can be a trade-off. And I think that we need to shape bylaws to ensure that housing construction in Gananoque meets the needs of all income groups across the span of their lifetime. So if you're young and you're starting out, I don't see a problem with having the traditional rooming house model here in Gananoque, because what do you need? A room and a common area and a place to live. I don't see a problem, for example, with short-term accommodations. If we change the rules, you should have stayed able to rent them out because you're grandfathered. So I believe in grandfathering. I believe that we need starter homes built in Gananoque. If we get more condominiums, they need to look like the ones next to the Lou Jeffries Arena, and perhaps less like the ones on the waterfront. And just because, and I don't mean either or, I mean we need to focus on both, but perhaps the near-term effort needs to be on attracting people to build housing that generates a profit for the builder, but that is aimed at at a buyer who's breaking into the housing market. And since I've lived here, there haven't been any starter homes built like that. There are projects on the books, but they're not being built for affordable housing because the one that was approved on King Street is waiting for someone to buy the project from the person who says they'll buy it. So until they get somebody to buy the whole project, they're not going to build it. We need to fight and claw our way to deliver the services that our community needs. And the mayor's role is to not just be positive for the wonderful things this town has. I love this town. That's why I moved here. But if we're going to attract young families, they need to be able to afford to buy here.
Thank you very much, John. And Greg, on to you.
I agree that I don't want to see people from Toronto buying houses down here to run them as short-term rental accommodations. But to have a blanket restriction on everybody not doing it, it just doesn't make any sense. We're not helping the small homeowner that's having trouble paying their mortgage by restricting them for not being able to rent out a room either by the night or by the week or by the month. But as I said, I don't want to see people buying houses and just using them as Airbnb party houses. But all that can be regulated with rules. Like, we get to make the rules. So we don't have to shut down everybody. We can just eliminate or make it difficult for people to buy party houses.
Thank you very much. Ted?
So as the chair of the Planning Advisory Committee, basically we have been dealing with housing issues over the last few years. If you look at the Vistra property, which is behind No Frills, that is being built on slab. It is accessible, so people will be able to not have to take steps to actually get in. As far as the 3D housing project in the other part of town, it is an experiment. What they're trying to do is build housing under $100 per square foot, and that is one of the reasons that they chose Gananoque, because they liked working with our planning staff in order to implement it. But more importantly, sitting as a director of the Joint Services Committee of the county, we have implemented and we looked at how do we provide more affordable housing, and one way is the secondary suites program, which will provide people who want to put an apartment in their house or build a laneway housing in order to get a forgivable loan in order to stimulate additional housing in those areas that are
Thank
tight.
you very much, Ted. John, back to you for your closing remark.
Thank you. Accessible is not the same as affordable, and the price point of the houses behind the No Frills are above the price point that can be afforded by many people who work and live in Gananoque full-time. The secondary suites program is basically an admission by the provincial government that they can't get industry to build affordable housing on a large-scale basis. And the question is, what can the town do to do whatever we can do to assist people in town to do the things they might do to create affordable housing?
Thank you very much, John. Greg, you're the next beginner. What is a town project or cause that you would like to champion or promote if elected?
I'd like to see that Parmenter and Bullock building, which has been an eyesore for a long time, either demolished or it's like they've been building rivets there for 150 years. So obviously the soil is contaminated. So it's not really conducive to building accommodations there. But I think it would be perfect for maybe a multi-story parking garage. That would solve a lot of parking issues. The building really can't be used for too much else. The parking garage could be built on a slab, so it's you're not really digging into the dirt. And it could provide parking down there for the boat line, which would free up those 2 parking lots for development. I'm sure there's a lot of developers that would line up to develop that property and turn it into something that's going to attract people here year-round.
Okay, thank you very much. Ted.
So for me, the most important thing that we need to kind of face from a council perspective is that we need to start looking at services for seniors and for youth, as well as families. Over the years, the county has been implementing most of the services. We pay into the county, Leeds Grenville, to implement these services. We need to take some of that responsibility back and start looking at our housing needs, start looking at the services for seniors, looking at services for youth. One of the things that I would like to see achieved, and quite honestly, that doesn't necessarily mean all council will push for the same thing, is to establish a seniors center here in town to provide some programming and some outreach to the various seniors groups, and that would be one of my number ones moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ted. John?
In a lot of ways, it's based on what we can afford, but the town fails if it doesn't deliver services for the largest number of its citizens. I would like to see the Kinsman Club retained and restored to usable condition. I think that would be an excellent facility, not just for a potential senior center, which this town desperately needs, but for a multi-use gathering place in the middle of town. The second project I would like to see is to improve our local access onto the Gananoque River. It's a 2-river city here. We have a boat ramp off River Street, which could use a little bit of stabilization, potentially a dock next to the Kinsman Club again off of Stone Street to let people put a canoe or a boat in who live in the area, and allow us to access both of the rivers, which we're blessed with. I believe that accessing recreational opportunities, creating internal sports leagues, and allowing people to access sports at every age is critical.
Thank you very much, John. Greg, back to you.
Yeah, I agree 100%. We've got 2 rivers here with minimal access to both. It's beyond me why the council, the previous council, didn't, when they were giving out the building permit for the Stone Street South condos. I don't know if everybody remembers the Stone Street dock that used to be there. For a town that's in the middle of the Thousand Islands, nobody can buy gas on the river. Brendan Marina is the only one, and a lot of big boats can't fit underneath the bridge. So there's no place to buy gas here. So that Stone Street dock could have been extended. They could have had a contractor's dock there, transient docking on both sides, a gas dock on the end of it, and it still would have been a breakwater for the condo's marina. And the condo would have paid for all that in return for a building permit. And I think the town totally missed the boat on that.
Thank you very much, Greg. Our next question, we start back with Ted. As the world population gets older, the United Nations has declared time frame from 2021 to 2030 as the decade of healthy aging, and that we need to focus on reducing aging inequities globally and to work on improving the health and well-being of the senior population, which is 10% of the world's population. In Gananoque, the senior population, 55 and over, represents 39% of the population, according to the census of 2020. What will you do as mayor to help improve the health and well-being of our seniors?
So, as the council, we have a responsibility to work with the seniors population to see what they would like to proceed with and work with them. I actually helped establish the Gananoque Seniors Association. There's a group that is actually up and running. They have been quite diligent in trying to establish their board of directors, trying to move forward, et cetera, et cetera. They are at this point, they have put in a proposal to lease out the part of the Kinsman Center, which was the daycare, and we have established, the town has established a Kinsman advisory group to look at the usage of the Kinsman Center to see whether we can accommodate the various proponents that have come forward to look at that, one of which is the Gananoque Seniors Association. But there are many other seniors programs in the community, and we have reached out to the YMCA, we've reached out to the Family Health Unit, we've reached out to various other providers to, first of all, look at the types of programs that are being provided and to look at how do we communicate what programs are actually in existence here in Gananoque and how do we better utilize them or coordinate them. It is a problem that we have elements happening all across the town for different periods of time, different hours. And the Gananoque Seniors Association believes that if they have a center occupied here in Gananoque, they will be able to coordinate those programs a little better and communicate with the general population as to the needs and also the look at future planning for additional programs and services, as well as hire a part-time seniors coordinator. We did receive some funding for that just recently, and right now they're meeting again sometime next week to look at how they can access that program and how to best use that funding that they have received. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ted. John, same question to you.
Thank you. First off, I would seek and accept personal responsibility for your choice of me as mayor. I wouldn't say council. The mayor and council work together. So I would talk about what I need to do as the mayor, as a member of council, and in concert with your councillors. That's the first thing I would do. Second, the average age in Gananoque is 8 years higher than the Canadian average. I would fight like a mad dog to get the medical professionals into town that we have to get. We just lost our only optometrist, and there's no easy access to one in proximity. Third, the town's permanent staff was 55 people in 2018. It's 65 this year. The idea of hiring anyone else at this point in time when our budget is extremely stressed concerns me greatly. I don't know if we can afford that to hire somebody else. We would have to find out of Hyde someone to provide the coordination from inside the organization. We increased our staff, permanent staff, by 18% over the last 4 years. And at this point in time, the tax levy in town is $9.2 million. Staff budget, $8.19 million.
Thank you very much, John. And Greg, on to you.
Well, I work at Hotel du Hospital, and I've had a lot of exposure to seniors that really struggle to get rides up to the hospital for clinic visits. As far as I'm concerned, there's no reason why we shouldn't be providing a facility down here for medical professionals to come here so that our seniors don't have to go to Kingston. They can be seen here in town, which would alleviate a lot of the stress on them getting rides back and forth. To me, the medical professionals are also looking for space to work. All we need to do is provide it.
Thank you very much, Greg. Ted, back to you.
So, John misunderstood. The Gananoque Seniors Association received the grant, and they're looking at hiring a part-time coordinator. It is not the town. So let me state that. But as far as medical professionals go, recently we just acknowledged a new doctor that has moved into town that will be working at the healthcare clinic on Herbert Street, Dr. Spahn. He was attracted here because of the Thousand Islands, because of the waterfront, because of the trails. He is young, and we spend an inordinate amount of time coercing him to come to town, and he loves it.
Thank you, Ted. I was trying to let you get it out. I'm sorry. All right, our next question will start with John. Every term, the residents of Gananoque ask for the transparent council help for clarity and understanding of decisions being made or why decisions require adjustments. What will you do to ensure that this will finally happen?
Thank you very much. This is where I live in ethics and transparency. If elected to the office of mayor, I'm paid by the taxpayer. I'm answerable to the taxpayer. I have to be available and transparent to the taxpayer. It's your town, not mine. I need to take direction on what is important from the people of Gananoque, and then that's what I have to work on. I have a lot of good ideas based on what people have told me, but they can always be adjusted. And the reality is that anything I do as the mayor, I'm going to make somebody unhappy, and I owe that person to sit down and let them be unhappy at me because they're paying my salary too. Right, there's a reason the office of the mayor should be next to the front counter at the town hall, because you need to be seen, you need to be available and accessible. So bring back the committee of the whole, bring back the questions. If the questions aren't answered on the record, they don't count. You need to be able to back check somebody's record. You need to answer. All of the closed meetings held by this council in the last 4 years, not a single set of minutes has been published. For me, this is an enormous concern. Not least because even if there may be a good reason to have a closed meeting, if you're buying a piece of property or selling a piece of property, once the deal is done, publish the minutes. There may be good privacy reasons to have one, but they can't all be good privacy reasons. You need to actively seek out opinions and look internally to find the answers that matter to the people of Gananoque. I believe in putting the service back into public service. I believe in obeying rules and following regulations always, even the inconvenient ones, especially the inconvenient ones. I believe in being public and available because that's what the job demands of me. And if I'm not public and I'm not available and I'm not reachable, if I don't answer the phone, then I'm not doing my job for you.
Thank you very much, John. Greg, on to you.
Well, I've often wondered what happened to our free $1 million rink. I don't understand why engineering firms that were highly qualified and have built lots of rinks had a lower bid and were ignored for a company that had no experience building rinks and had a higher bid. It makes no sense to me whatsoever, and it's unfortunate that we have to wait for a court case to get our answers, as opposed to the council being transparent and explaining to us what happened.
Thank you, Greg. Ted.
John's comments that closed meetings are all held in private and nothing is accountable is absolute nonsense. As soon as there is a decision that is made, we go to open council and council votes on every item. And that is the transparency. So there is no such thing as closed meetings unless it continues to be closed, first of all. The mayor is one of 7 votes, and we basically vote, and whatever that vote is democratically elected, democratically voted on, and we stay with that vote. And last but not least, availability. This is a cell phone. I get 5 to 7 cell phones a day, and I answer them.
Thank you very much. John, back to you.
The reporting out of closed meetings is that the meeting happened, that there was a vote, and that's all we get. That's the first part. But looking forward, the important part about this is actually not the past. The important part of this is actually the future and how we might do things differently. And we need to restore the feeling of trust in municipal government, because I'm getting the sense that a lot of people want more from government, but they may not be getting it. And my question is, how do we deliver that to them to restore the sense that even though we're imperfect, we're going to admit publicly when we screwed up, and we're going to say that we're going to do it better next time.
Thank you, John. Greg, how do you plan to involve residents in the decision-making process of our town?
Well, as going back to my reference to the Festival of the Islands, I was amazed at the volunteer effort that came forth. It seemed like everybody in the town was volunteering to help. So we need, projects like that along those lines to sort of re-energize people into, wanting to get involved. But I think the transparency aspect of it would go a long way into getting people back involved in the governing of the town. Everybody I've talked to seems quite apathetic about the whole situation, and it's tough to get people interested in what we're doing. So I think festivals, music festivals, different things like that would sort of start the ball rolling anyway, and then we can build on that.
Thank you very much, Greg. Ted?
Well, obviously, this is the first public meeting that we've had in almost 3 years, so it's great that we're finally able to meet in person. We did have numerous surveys that were conducted over the years. One was on public transit. We had good feedback on that, and that came where the report came from. We also had a lot of feedback on the town square, including one of the options that I didn't agree with, which was looking at moving the cenotaph, which we got a lot of comments back very quickly. So yes, we do. I do believe that we do need to have more public meetings, and luckily, because of the restrictions over the years, now we can get back to open dialogue with people on various items that we're actually having. Yeah, I'm quite happy that we're at that stage at this point.
Thank you very much, Ted. John?
We need to do everything we possibly can to make government as accessible as possible to everybody. There's basic stuff, like how accessible is the town's website and the data on it? How easily searched, or can you type in a term and get a good search that gives you back the bylaw that refers to what you want to know? Something as basic as fine-tuning the software, something that needs to happen. Can you bring it up in large font easily? So we need to reach out to people to get them more engaged. And surveys are good, but one of the problems that we also have is we don't have a local press that tells you about what government's doing anymore. So all you're getting from the municipality is what the municipality tells you. We need to push from the municipality out to the town, notice of events, opportunities for meetings, to let people know not only what's going on, but where we want input in order to make sure that we're on the right track, or the best track, because nothing's perfect. All we can do is the best.
Thank you very much, John. Greg, on to you.
Well, I think part of the apathy with the public has been the result of some very poor decisions, and this present council is excluded because it's the previous council that approved that abomination on the back of the town hall that ruined one of the nicest examples of neoclassic architecture in southeastern Ontario, and now it is ruined. And then to sort of rub salt in the wound, we've cut down a bunch of trees and sort of took our very quaint town park and turned it into almost a parking lot. There's I don't know what those limestone walls are for, and also the exorbitant amount of brick pavers that are through there. We lost a lot of trees. It just.
Thank you very much, Greg. Next question is for you, Ted. If someone came to you with a proposal to build a new piece of public infrastructure in town, whether it be a road, a bridge, or anything like that, how would you evaluate whether or not the project was worth implementing?
I think part of it is we would need to kind of shortlist the projects that we were looking at, quite honestly, and then look at public consultation from the public as to which ones they would prioritize, quite honestly. It's a difficult question because there's a lot of priorities in this town, and there's only so much money that the town actually has to utilize on a yearly basis. Obviously, our infrastructure is old, whether they're sewers or water mains or whatever else, and they're always breaking down. So that one of the priorities we continually have to look at is the stuff that's not sexy. That is, you know, how do we keep our roads under repair? How do we keep our sidewalks under repair, et cetera, as well as looking at balancing off the needs of the community on other levels. You know. Part of the priority we've had over the last while is to look at the environment. Again, because of the climate change, because of the water levels continually going up and down, we have been looking at planting more trees. We've been looking at recycling programs. We're looking at composting programs, et cetera. So again, it's a matter of doing what you can to look at the needs of the community. But as far as a mega project, at this point, I don't think that the community needs one. We have been working with some of the other organizations in town to look at their needs and aspirations. The Thousand Island Playhouse here has a master plan that they're looking at making this place even more accessible and more and increase their capacity, et cetera, and I think that is commendable. But other organizations, we also need to work with them, whether it's the Lions or the Rotary Club or other organizations, to look at how best we can help them to reach their own aspirations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ted. And John, on to you.
I think the question becomes balancing what do we need versus what do we want. And the spending I've seen in the last 4 years has been an awful lot about want and not enough focus on need. You have to look at how spending delivers the most benefit for the largest number of citizens and buys the things you want. Right now, the capital infrastructure deficit, not including water and sewer in this town, is over $10 million. And as we're under the gun and coming back from things. So the question would be, is the proposal going to deliver benefit for the citizens of Gananoque? And if yes, then let's see if we can afford to do it. And if we can't afford to do it, let's do it. If not, at this time, that doesn't mean not forever. That means that it needs to be a living question that we can keep asking ourselves so that when we afford it, we can deliver that benefit for our citizens with public money. But we shouldn't go asking for grants for things we want. We should get them for things we need. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. Greg, on to you.
It seems like we've sort of closed the barn door after the horses have been let out. There's seems to be a lot of money that has been spent on things that we certainly didn't need. As I said, one of them was the addition on the back of the town hall. The town park also comes to mind too. It just seems to me that a lot of decisions are being made by unelected, unaccountable people. And the council just exists to give the illusion that the townspeople are being represented. That's all I got to say about that.
Thank you very much, Greg. Ted.
So the town does have an asset management plan. It is quite extensive, and it is one of the biggest headaches that all councils face is how do we replace some of the assets that we currently have on one level, and on the other level, how do we ensure that we meet the needs of the community over the long run without continually increasing the property taxes, et cetera, and increasing the cost and the burden to our local residents.
Thank you very much, Ted. Our next question is for John. There's an obvious transportation issue for anyone without their own vehicle in Gananoque. How do you plan to address this important issue and help residents to not only get around our town, but to also the surrounding areas?
Thank you. Gananoque was built around the railroad, and the design of the downtown is built around the old rail bed of the Thousand Islands Railroad. And as long as it was here, people could get to the CN, and when they could get to the CN, they could get to Brockville and Kingston, and they did it a lot of times every day. When the rail line came out, historically, there wasn't a lot of transit, and there hadn't been a commuter line to Kingston. We need access to services, and for me, transportation and transit is about accessing services out of Gananoque, in as much as it is potentially allowing people to come into Gananoque. And I believe that there are potential solutions to that problem, either by linking with potentially Kingston Transit or by linking with a local service provider like Clark Bus Lines, who have got unused equipment when the school buses aren't running. The point I'm going to make here, again, is COVID provided 2 years of downtime where the kind of planning that would turn this into an actionable plan that could be tested could have happened, but it didn't. And in a lot of ways, I would look at commercial industry to ask them, what do you need in order to make a service happen, and how do we have to help you get there to provide an affordable transportation access to the people of Gananoque? And it's not one and done, because it may turn out that not enough people are using it. I don't think that would be the case. I think there's a lot of demand here. But we would have to actually look at how it's delivered and then refine the model so that it was affordable, that it delivered the most access for people in Gananoque, and that it didn't consume too many taxes to deliver that service. I think there's a balance to be found in there. But it's not necessarily in only one solution. I think we need to look at every possible solution to provide access to services. And getting services back into Gananoque actually begins to address some of that problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. Greg, your turn.
Yeah, I agree with John. It's a multi-pronged issue, and as I said earlier, the casino shuttle could be utilized, and certainly Clark buses or McCoy Transport, who do a lot of transportation for the hospital. And any other commercial venues that would be interested in that. We have to seek them out, and as John said, ask them how we can help them make it happen.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Ted, back to you.
So in order to pay for public transit, one has to rely on the provincial gas tax, and we don't have the population to actually balance the books on that. So we have reached out to the county numerous times to work through that. Right now we're in the process of dealing with Kingston. But more importantly, we have reached out to Via Rail and to Megabus to see whether we can get additional stops in here. Not myself, one of the councillors. And last but not least, we had negotiations with the casino, and they were prepared to subsidize a bus service between Gananoque and Kingston, and I think that would have come to fruition had we been able to get the bus up and running during the COVID times. I'm not blaming COVID for everything, but there was a plan. The plan is continuing, and the plan right now is to basically provide Kingston Transit into Gananoque, and hopefully that'll happen in 2023. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ted. And John, your closing remark?
Sorry, thank you.
Sorry.
Closing.
Yes.
Thank you for this opportunity to present myself as a candidate, and thank you.
Oh, sorry, John. No, closing for the transportation question. Yes, sorry. I know, it's confusing. They both say closing.
Context. I think I'm out of time now.
You can start over. It's quite all right.
Ownership of the casino has changed. So the question becomes whether the same conditions carry forward with the current owner. But the reality is that regardless of what these efforts were, how many people in the room were aware that any of this was happening? Show of hands, please. Okay, so 25%. Part of the problem that we face here is the communication problem, and we need to do that better.
Thank you very much, John. Our next question is for you, Greg. There is a healthcare shortage all over Ontario, but it is particularly dire here in Gananoque. Even with our new doctor having just recently arrived, there are no doctors accepting new patients. What do you plan to do to correct this situation?
Well, I'll refer back to our previous comment about providing facilities for medical professionals to come here, specialists to come here and conduct their clinics. And that would save not only our senior citizens from traveling to Kingston and trying to find transportation, but anybody that lives in the town. The clinics at the hospitals are very busy, and everybody's looking for extra spots. So we just need to provide it, and they will come.
Thank you very much, Greg. Ted, your remarks?
Some municipalities obviously provide cash grants to doctors to move into the community, like Kingston. If I'm not mistaken, Kingston is offering $100,000 if you if you move into Kingston and become a doctor. We don't have that kind of money, but we can encourage people to look at Gananoque as a place to live and a place to enjoy. On the other hand, we do, as a council, our town council actually subsidizes Stone Mills for the doctor's offices there. This was put forward by Jim Guerra when he was the mayor many years ago. And the deal here is we subsidize their lease in that particular building if it is not occupied. So we have made a lot of inroads to try to provide doctors in the area, and we've had meetings with Leeds Grenville as a joint services to try to figure out how we can attract more doctors into the area, either through Kingston or through Brockville or the various colleges.
Thank you, Ted. John?
Thank you. I was extremely excited when the IDA pharmacy opened up and the owners had the innovative idea of introducing a telehealth diagnostic service so people could actually, who didn't have a doctor in town, could actually access diagnosis for something that could be treated with a prescription or be told, get to a hospital. The reality is that the doctor arrived in town, didn't add any extra capacity. He took over somebody else's patient list, and they're not accepting patients. Your tax dollars do subsidize the operation of the Stone Mill Clinic. That's not, let's be clear, that's not council, that's not the mayor, that's your tax money. You're helping to subsidize the access to those people. And while paying somebody a supplementary fee to come to GAN may not be practical, the question is, can we build a clinic that attracts specialists on a part-time basis to deliver those services here and then work the rest of the week at Kingston?
Thank you very much, John. Greg? Your closing remarks, or of the question.
I agree with what John just said. We need to provide a facility for specialists to come here. They don't necessarily have to move here or live here. They'll be more than happy to drive down here from Kingston and hold their clinics here, and then drive back to Kingston at the end of the day. And that saves everybody going from here to Kingston. You've got one person traveling down to GAN instead of dozens of people trying to get to Kingston. But we need a facility for that.
Thank you very much, Greg. Our next question is for you, Ted. How can we attract new business to our main street when many properties that are there already are empty or not available, either because of the cost, which is speculative, or otherwise lack of interest in improving the street as they do not live here and do not care?
Are you talking about the downtown?
Yes.
So,
but also probably in general.
If you're looking at the downtown, we have been told by our business coordinator from downtown that works for the town that we cannot find a shop or a business downtown that is available for lease. A lot of those businesses that are downtown are either already leased or they're not available for leasing purposes. We have been working with economic development in Kingston and our economic development group here to provide assistance to various businesses, again, over the last few years, to provide them with access to funds, either to deal with the whole COVID aspect, or more importantly on the patio aspect, or to increase their capacity, or to basically put in dividers in between various stalls to keep people healthy, et cetera, et cetera. Each of these businesses got approximately $3,500 in order to be able to change their business to meet the health requirements, as well as we have been very diligent on working with various businesses that want to go through the planning process to either expand their facility or get a permit or whatever else kind of thing. So as far as our downtown goes, it is quite vibrant. If you look at, there's quite a few shops that have opened over the last year, but more importantly, we still need to look at, shopping local to be able to continue to encourage them and keep them here as well. There are a couple of other buildings that are right now in the process of being renovated downtown, and hopefully within the next year or two, there will be a new a federal government office opening downtown as well, kind of thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ted. John?
There's a dynamic tension in downtown Gananoque, and it's the tension between businesses whose main focus is providing services for tourists and amortizing their costs through the winter, or businesses whose focus is providing services for local population and operating them year-round. I've talked to people who talked about there used to be 5 clothing stores for women in downtown Gananoque, and now there are none. And so the real important question is, how do we attract the kind of businesses that leverage the tourist economy to support themselves, but restore accesses that we don't have anymore in GAN. In a lot of ways, it comes down to things that matter to all of us: property taxes, the cost of water and sewer. But again, it's about how do you get the labor to provide the man and woman power to operate such a business year-round. And for a lot of people who are considering something that isn't just straight-up tourist-focused and operated by themselves or their partner, putting anything larger down there is about they can't get labor because they can't afford to live in GAN.
Thank you, John. Greg, question to you.
Yeah, I agree. The accommodation issue does sort of play into it, because if people don't have anywhere to live, they do not want to work in this town. They'll be working somewhere else. Certainly tax incentives. I think businesses on the main street would do well to maybe have a decrease in their taxes, though the water bill, I think, needs to be explained to people a lot better. There's a lot of hidden costs in there that people just don't understand. I can't believe how many help wanted signs are around. They're everywhere. So that's certainly a major consideration for expanding your business or even keeping it running.
Thank you very much, Greg. Ted, back to you.
So I've heard the stories of Giant Tiger over and over. I've also heard the stories of I can't find anywhere to buy underwear in town many, many times, and I do understand that. But realistically, unless we have space for people to actually put in a shop, or even interested in putting in a shop, it's very difficult to attract them. Whenever businesses have asked for assistance, we've been there. Town council basically paved the whole laneway behind the stores in downtown in order to allow trucks to go back in there, and that was because they needed the help.
Thank you very much. Our next question, John. As you know, the tourism industry is a huge part of Gananoque's economy. How would you propose we support our tourism stakeholders during this recovery period?
Thank you. I grew up on a tourist lodge in Northern Ontario. Family operated that business for some 55 years. My father was the director of the Northern Ontario Tourist Outfitters for 2 years in the 1970s. I get the seasonal economics of the tourist business. And I think the place the town needs to be is in the middle of it. It's not the town's place to tell someone how to operate their business or how to advertise their business, but Gananoque is not advertised as an integrated destination. We aren't next to TLTI. As a destination, we and TLTI are the same destination. But nowhere in the advertising do you see properly put forward the idea of Gananoque as a combined destination where you can do all kinds of things for the entire family, starting from Charleston Lake running south of the St. Lawrence where the Gan meets it. And providing that integrated theme that links all of our tourist activities together is a place where the town sits between the Chamber of Commerce and tie-up and the township and the individual businesses which may not be part of the Chamber of Commerce or tie-up, and linking them all together to create a unifying theme and making Gananoque a destination. That's what we need to be. And that's where the town needs to live, is turning the wheel to make it an economic engine. Tourism in Gananoque is, again, basically a two-season business from mid-spring to mid-fall. The other place the town has to get involved to the best of its ability is attempting to access opportunities to either stretch that season or have tourism opportunities that land during late fall, winter, and early spring to help our operators amortize their costs and bridge the quiet zone in the middle. And we need to push for that as hard as we possibly can. The opening up of the border to the U.S. presents an opportunity. The decrease in the value of the Canadian dollar enhances that opportunity. We should be selling ourselves like crazy right now for summer 23.
Thank you very much, John. Greg, on to you.
Okay, so while summer tourism and Gananoque being marketed as a year-round destination are certainly not mutually exclusive. I think if we focus on both, but if we're sort of focusing on the town as a year-round destination, then summer tourism is going to benefit from that, just from the advertising that we do for the year-round visitors. So as far as, try to separate them both, or just talking about Gananoque as a summer tourist destination isn't going to benefit us at all. I think we need to market it as a year-round tourist destination.
Thank you very much, Greg. Ted, on to you.
The tourist industry in Gananoque has been doing an effective job for the last 10 to 20 years, attracting tourism internationally, domestically, into this particular thing. They have continued to do that. Every year now, through the MAT tax, which is the municipal accommodation tax, we provide them $170,000 to tie-up and $100,000 to the Tourist Advisory Board to attract tourists, to keep tourists here, and to also do entertainment here in town. They are also looking at expanding their season into the fall season and into the spring season, and they have been working diligently to look at how do you not only bring the tourists into town, but keep them here for a couple of more days to spend money, to live in accommodation and thing. I'm a tourist operator. I've been in the tourist industry ever since I came here, and quite honestly, the tourist industry and the tourist stakeholders do an excellent job, and I have no qualms about backing up any other tourist operators, including the boat line, including all the other entities in town, but we need to do more for the residents.
Thank you very much, Ted. John, back to you.
There's some low-hanging fruit. I find myself wondering why we don't operate a shuttle to the Lansdowne Fair, which, frankly, I think is amazing because we're the closest hotel, so we should advertise the daylights out of that and run it as a shuttle basis and have people in hotels here. I think that's a great idea. I'm not sure I agree with the MAT tax. I would, if elected, I'm going to look at whether or not we should get rid of the municipal accommodation tax, poll the tourism accommodation operators, poll the town, and see if we should keep it. I don't think it delivers a cost benefit. I think it's onerous to collect and onerous to administer.
Thank you very much, John. Greg.
I'm not a big fan of the MAT tax either. I think it's collected and it seems to go to a lot of administration. I don't think that the townspeople are really benefiting at all from a MAT tax. It seems to sort of be focused more on the people that are collecting it, and it doesn't really seem to benefit anybody else.
Thank you very much. Ted. What am I doing?
I'm sorry?
Oh, goodness.
It's going back to me? No. Okay.
goodness. Pardon? Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you. Do you want to start with this one?
Sorry?
Greg, did I go back to you when I shouldn't have gone back to you, my dear? Is that what happened there? Okay, thank you. All right, Greg, let's start with you again. And my apologies, everyone. I was reading the next couple of questions and didn't notice. I'm so sorry. So, Greg, if you could change one thing in our zoning code, what would it be and why?
Well, I'd like to make it a little bit easier for people to sever property and to build more housing for our accommodations. We certainly need more accommodations, and there seems to be the severing bylaws seem to be very restrictive. So I think that needs to be eased up a bit.
All right, thank you very much. Ted?
From a zoning perspective, I think the town is currently looking at laneway housing, garden homes, et cetera, but several members of the Planning Advisory Committee are also looking at designating certain land for affordable housing from a zoning perspective. So I think we need to start looking at what other municipalities are doing. John alluded to the fact that in Kemptville, for example, 15% of all housing being built or all residential housing being built is has to be designated for affordable housing, and we need to look at some of the other municipalities, how they're dealing with the housing issue and implementing that in our zoning bylaws as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ted and John.
It's a tough question, and there's no simple answer. And we've talked about this particular problem about 16 times already tonight, because it's how do we actually build the housing that the people who live here full-time need? And the answer is everything that's actually been said. We need to turn all the wheels at once, because there's no one fix to this problem. And there are no bad ideas provided it delivers benefit for the public and the people who live here. So the question becomes what's affordable, what's achievable, and how do we get it built? None of these fixes are going to work in less than 4 years. The planning process, again, is not terribly hard, but the reality is that construction takes time. We have a shortage of skilled trades. Supplies are expensive. So getting something built takes at least 4 years. But if you don't start now, when are you going to start? It's my number one priority, affordable housing and getting it built.
Thank you very much, John. Greg, on to you.
Yes, affordable housing needs is a primary concern of mine also. And aside from severing or building tiny homes or making it a lot easier for people to do this, there just seems to be, it's very restrictive right now as far as going to the town hall and trying to get permits for anything.
Thank you very much, Greg. And our final question, Ted, starting with you. What's more important to our city right now? Building new homes and commercial space, or renovating, expanding, better utilizing, or existing homes and storefronts?
I think the opportunity right now is to look at renovating existing homes and looking at how do we basically provide additional housing with the housing stock we have right now. Yes, there are development projects here and there all over the town that are going through the planning process, but I think that the easiest thing is to look at how do we encourage people to continue to live in their homes, to look at possibly putting in what they used to call granny suites in their basements, looking at dividing their homes into several components, etc. And as I mentioned before, Leeds, Grenville, and the province both have a secondary suites program. They're slightly different. One is focused on the householder. The other one is focused on the landlord. But both of those programs are meant to increase the housing stock or rental housing availability within tight urban spaces. But on the other hand, we do need to look at how do we facilitate through the planning process quicker decisions to allow development to happen, but more importantly, to hold the proponents accountable to ensure that that housing is being built within a timely fashion. We've had several development plans that have gone through, and the developers basically sit on their hands and try to sell the property after it's already ready to go. And quite honestly, that doesn't help anybody, quite honestly. So I think part of it is, to do our due diligence to make sure that any developer that wants to develop a piece of property is prepared to actually build it out rather than just rezone it and then sit on it and hope to make money by just going through the planning process. So there's two components. One is do what we can right now and also look for the future.
Thank you very much, Ted. John, your turn.
Reno or new build, the answer is actually both. If you're a landowner and you want to renovate and you want to leverage a provincial or a county project, God bless you, let's see how we can make it happen. If you're willing to come and do new build, let's encourage you to do that as well. I thank the mayor for reiterating the point that I made earlier, which is that there needs to be a place where we can adjust bylaws to see that construction happens when, where, and how is needed. To prevent stalled developments or frozen land from essentially waiting for a maximum profit point, because that doesn't deliver what we need right now. It's young families are just as unhoused and just as underserviced as seniors. And at that entry point level, the answer, how do we attract new young people to Gananoque, is again about how do we provide them with housing they can access at a price they can afford. We need to do both. You actually need to turn all the wheels. It's not one or the other. It's actually everything. And if someone's willing to commit their money, then I'm going to help them to make it happen. Thank
you very much, John. Greg?
Well, these guys basically covered all the bases. It's not either or, it's both. You need to facilitate renovations, make it easier for people to renovate and add on to existing buildings, and we need new buildings. But that can all be done through bylaws, which are basically non-existent right now. So that's what we need to work on.
Thank you very much, Greg. Any final words on that one, Ted?
So, unfortunately, I agree with both of my fellow candidates that we need to do both. About a week ago, town staff and myself, we actually had a meeting of all the we invited all the contractors, all the organizations, the chamber and whatnot, to look at this secondary suites program, and we brought in the housing people from the county to actually explain how the program works, to provide applications, etc. And I think that to go through some of the contractors is the only way we can actually market this thing, but it needs to get done.
Thank you very much, Ted. And that concludes the series of questions that we have for tonight's debate. And I just want to point out I only flubbed once out of 16 questions. I think that was pretty good. Thank you. We'll now hear our closing statements or comments. And again, we will keep with the same order. So we're starting with you, Ted.
I believe the role of the Mayor of Gananoque is not just to provide leadership necessary for Town Council to get things done and to represent the concerns and issues faced by local residents, but to encourage discussion and explore ideas on how to address issues and how to improve our community by both council members as well as members of the public. Our council members during their term in office each undertook a specific portfolio with members of the community to look at affordable housing issues, recreational issues, seniors issues, marina issues, parking issues, cultural issues, as well as communication and outreach. The town appointed members onto boards and committees who came from diverse interests and were not afraid to challenge how things were being done, as well as making recommendations how to do things better. When you decide on your next council representatives, choose individuals who will provide the dedication and time commitment to listen to your concerns and how to drive and have the drive to get things done. I firmly believe it is important that the mayor should encourage local involvement, but more importantly, encourage projects and undertakings by local groups independent of town council. I have worked with the Lions, the Rotary, the downtown businesses, and other groups to encourage them to apply and receive funding grants for events, park improvements, and financial assistance. I have helped establish the Gananoque Arts Network and the Gananoque Seniors Association and have encouraged their development so they can provide much-needed services to our arts and community and to our seniors community. I tirelessly explore funding options for the town and for various businesses or organizations and have an excellent working relationship with our two members of Parliament, Steve Clark and Michael Barrett. As a representative of Gananoque on the joint services of the county, I have been an advocate for affordable housing issues, community service issues, as well as ensuring that our paramedics have the staff and the resources necessary to provide our county with excellent service. I look forward to the opportunity to continue to work for the town and serve you to the best of my ability. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ted. Perfect timing. John, your closing remarks.
I'd like to start by thanking the persons, the men who ran and succeeded in the election for council and Mayor Loico as well. It takes guts to do it. It takes guts to put yourself in, and democracy doesn't work if people don't step up. So I thank them for that. Honestly, I wouldn't be here if I didn't think I couldn't do a better job, but I appreciate the fact that he's willing to put himself out there. Transparency and ethics is what I plan to bring forward. One of the things that I'm going to do, I think that matters, is I'm going to tell you everything that I own. So I'm going to have a paper copy of a list of everything I have in my self-directed RSP and TFSA, so you know that I don't own or do own shares in Canadian Tire, whether or not I should be voting on anything to do with that company. My spouse works at PharmaSave. I won't touch anything to do with the pharmacies because I have a vested financial interest in the operation of one of those businesses. My daughter is a part-time employee at a business in town. You'll know where that is. You'll know when I shouldn't be voting and when I shouldn't be dipping my oar in the water because I'll put it out there so you can see it. And you can call me on it. That's what I mean by transparency. I believe that we need to manage the budget in a way that is affordable to the citizens of Gananoque and delivers the most benefits for the largest number of people, and sometimes benefits for a small number of people, because I wouldn't want to be or live in a society that didn't pay for wheelchair ramps, because everyone should be able to get through the front door. My intent is to try to build for the future a Gananoque that continues to be the place that we want it to be for the people who continue to live here in perpetuity. I believe that this is a wonderful community. I know it's a wonderful community. I love living here. And we need to make it as accessible, we need to make it as comfortable and as affordable as possible for everybody who lives here. And I'll answer questions like, for example, the water tax levy. The real important question with the water levy for infrastructure is, when's it over? When is it paid for?
Thank you very much, Joan. And Greg, for your final remarks.
Okay. Well, I'm fortunate to have grown up in Gananoque, and I've got a lifetime of wonderful memories that reinforce a close connection to the people in the town. I look forward to energizing those people into helping out governing the town. As far as transparency and accountability goes, I think that's paramount with pretty well everybody. People need to know what's going on, and that would go a long way into getting rid of the apathy that it seems to be prevalent in a lot of the voters right now. So I look forward to re-energizing the interest of the townspeople.
Thank you very much, Greg. And thank you all for coming. Just a few things I want to say. First of all, tonight's debate has been taped courtesy of Cogeco and will be available to watch on Thursday, and will also be posted on our Chamber's social media pages as well for the link. I also want to send a very big thank you to the Firehall Theatre for allowing us the space tonight and so graciously hosting us, and also to point out that Jan and Sue did an amazing job on keeping time and keep everyone on their toes. It is a very tedious task, and you can see how important it is, because here we are finally wrapping up. So again, thank you all for coming, and just so you know, all the candidates are going to be in the lobby area afterwards as well, where you can ask them questions directly. And please remember that the GAN Council All-Candidate Debate will be on October 17th, right here again at the Firehall Theatre. And the TLTI candidate debate for council will be on Wednesday, October 12th at the Lansdowne Community Center as well. Thank you all again. Have a great evening.